Welcome to Dreamy Dreamland with Sunset Bob. Just checking in with you. Out here in the deep green. Here, let you see the deep green. So it's leafing out, right? I'm on my friend's, my neighbor's. Well, he's not really my neighbor. He's my down the road neighbor. But I'm hanging on his Wi-Fi. It's the only kind of thing I can get. That's the closest anyway. I can drive 20, 30 miles and go to a coffee shop or something. But anyway, a story. What's a story? So we are live chat. That's where we are. We're at live chat and we're here 1 minute, right? And there's nobody here yet. And rotate this, baby. Stay up there. So that's what the woods looks like. It's quite nice. And the rich have moved in, and it's I don't know if anyone's noticed how strange everything is. But I really, I've been on my soapbox long enough. I don't need to do that anymore. How you all doing? Let's see. What's in my little thing here? PBS NewsHour. Seems like somebody shot or poisoned the head of the military in Russia. That'll be interesting. And we gave the whatchamacallits, the Ukrainians the long range version of the very, very accurate artillery, and so they can now hit things in behind the lines, right? And they can hit things in Crimea, right? And so they knock out that bridge, they take out the air bases, they take out the naval facilities. That would be a big issue for Putin. But again, like I'm saying, this is all scripted. I mean, if they gave them those missiles to begin with, the war would have been over. But, this is a bloodlust. We're happy to have wars anywhere in the world as long as it's somebody else dying. And when we have to, we'll throw our own kids under the bus. But what do you guys, what are you thinking? What are you saying? What's going on? Oh, when the war came to me back in, I graduated in 1968 from high school. I went to college and I was already doing the job already. I was already in NABITH and IATSE. I was already in the unions of theater and movies, and I was in Local 3, so I was, whatever I was going to school for, was doing that. And I was already well educated by the Maranols when I was at their sanctuary. I learned Greek and Hebrew and theology and physics and math and computer programming. I pretty much had it all down. And it was exciting and fun when they were teaching me it. But when I went to school, it was like, what? It was like going back to if Kim Romano was there, it would have been okay. But she wasn't. If my crew was there, it would have been fine. Because everybody there was 99.9. It was Hofstra University, right? I went to school with the richest people, their names are irrelevant, but the corporations, Eddie Merrill, Ricky Lynch, they were my buds, Merrill and Lynch, Alex Orbs, family-owned U.S. Steel, Perry Dye's family-owned Seagram's, UB Hobart, the Hobart restaurant and food processing machines, et al. The Shah of Iran's son, Joe Kennedy, who was congressman, he was my roommate. So I saw all of this, and these people had more money than anybody else, more than the Elon Musk and those morons. Those guys are just what do you call them? Poster boys, right? They haven't invented anything, don't know anything. Oh, Joy, you're back. Yeah, I'm back. And I'm trying to not try. I am doing a better job of instead of whining or being on a soapbox, I'm going to work on telling stories that kind of show this. So I've been here in the deep green of Tennessee between, Kingsport, Johnson City, and Asheville, right? I'm kind of right in the middle of that. And I thought the rich people would never show up because I'm about 40 miles to closest Walmart's. And there's only one road, and it's not a state road. It's like a county road. And it would say farmer's road. And now the traffic, when I first got here 22 years ago, I remember, trying to sell my stuff up on the road, right? Like a yard sale. And I put aside, no one ever showed up, right? So I kind of took it up there when there's a big space where people can pull off. And I was sitting out there one day, I was reading a book, and 3 people went by me in a 6-hour period. 3. Nobody stopped. 3 people, right? And then I put a big sign up, reader advisor, and, I have everything that your dreams would want, right? The next day I put 3 big signs. Have you ever been on the throughways where they had the peanut signs, like 50 miles away, Larry's Peanuts, right? So I kind of did that. And one person stopped to get his palm read. That was it, right? And then I had the hat out and I had a $20 bill in it. And he looked at it, goes, "What, do I have to pay anything?" I said, "Well, way this works is the value that you experience from this reading." "Well, it was great. I mean, wow, I'm impressed." Well, if you put money in, it shows how you feel about yourself. What does that mean? It means, it's in our society, money talks, nobody walks. So if you throw in some money, it shows that you actually got something out of it. And within a shamanic motif, you're putting energy, green energy, into bringing forth a better outcome. "Well, you mean I owe you something?" I said, "No. If you want to give a gratuity, if you were impressed, if you enjoyed the show, yeah, but you don't have to, And if you don't have any money now, that's fine, pay it forward." "What's that mean?" It means, next time you have $20 in your pocket, give it to somebody who needs it. "Why would I do that?" And that was the last I tried to sell stuff on. But those 2 days, all of 5 people drove by in that car, right? Now, I was driving down that same road, and it goes between a Sawtooth mountain range. So it's always doing this and up and down and up and down. And there's 3 big, gigantic lakes. So that lake is there. They're not building a bridge. So it goes all the way around it, right? So anyway, a side of a mountain fell into the highway, right? And so we were all stopped. And this guy is, and I'm like the first guy there, right? So the side of the mountain had fallen down, relatively soon, not too, instead of being at the end of the line, I was like at the front. Anyway, so I kind of got out and said, "What's going?" I said, "Oh," he said, "the side of the cliff kind of fell off and we're trying to move it." I said, "Well, is it dirt? Is it, gravel? Is it, there's no big rocks, probably, there's one rock right in the middle of the highway that's kind of the size of a house, probably weighs, I don't know, 100 tons. So how are you going to move that?" He goes, "Oh, we're going to have to get pneumatic drills and put explosives in it." And I said, "Won't that disrupt?" Because I knew exactly where it was. I said, "You mean that big rock that was hanging over the highway for the last 20 years? "Yeah, that's the one." I said, "Why did it come now?" He said, "Well, this road wasn't designed for tractor trailers." And it comes right over that hill and then swings back down around it. And every time they downshift the vibrations, wriggle that whole hill, right? And then we, had a lot of rain, and then it got super cold. So all that rain got into the cracks that were there. And then that, and when I say super cold, it was like 60 degrees below zero, not below freezing, not, this is Fahrenheit, not 32 degrees, but you go down 32 degrees to zero, and then add another 60 degrees below that. So that's like 92 degrees below the temperature of freezing water. That's pretty cold, right? And so that water froze, expanded, it pushed the rocks a little more, make the cracks a little bigger, and it did that about 4 times. And then, in March, big rock falls into highway, right? And I said, anyone get hit? He goes, well, one of those tractor trailers landed down in the valley and into the lake, and they're looking for the truck now. I said, did the driver jump out? He goes, no, I haven't really found, we found his head. I think he had his head out the window, and I think he kind of got it clipped off by a tree or something, because there's a lot of smashing and crashing into trees down there. I said, oh, okay. And so that has happened 3 times in the last 2 months. And then we only have one road, Uno Road. Now, there are little dirty roads that are farm roads that are like that road. That's what most of the county's roads are like, that. And yet, they're expecting, like around the lake, they built 800 houses. And because we have no, building codes, everyone has, they put a septic tank there, but instead of leach fields, they're straight piping it into the lake. And so that's why this beautiful, pristine lake that's normally slate blue, and they come and have TV shows of how to fish here. Certain corners of the lake have already started to have algae blooms. And so, a couple of cities get their drinking water out of that. So, in the Bible, it says you're not supposed to shit in your house, I think. I think Paul said that. Don't shit in your house. So anyway, so those kind of things are happening. And I visit 3 churches every Sunday. The Ku Klux Klan Baptist Church, and those people are very, very nice. And boy, can they cook whenever they do something like so. That they had all these high school kids of the baseball teams, and there's a guy who came from this neck of the woods who's a real great baseball player. And because, these public schools, these kids have no way of going to college. They're so poor they can't even, no one's going to lend them money to go to college, right? So sports is their only way. So they really got amazing basketball teams, fair football teams, great baseball teams. And they do have a couple of coaches who do wrestling and tennis that they do the girls do the tennis, right? And so anyway, the baseball teams were all at the church. So the church was packed, right? And that church has across the street a public school that for all of its existence, like the last 50, 60 years, they have been joined at the hip, right? Because most of the kids who go there go to the church, right? So the county, because all these old rich people are coming in, they don't want to pay tax for education. So they're all moving. So there were a whole bunch of these little schools are really great. I mean, because, they have teaching the kids baseball and basketball so they can go to college, and really teaching them, the things you get tested on, STEM stuff, math, how to read, all that stuff. Because most of the teachers in those little schools went to those little schools when they were kids. So they have they went away, went to college because they learned how to play basketball and baseball, or, tennis if you were a girl, and came back after they had a career, once they kind of got married and brought the family back here and took care of mom and dad on the farm, and, basically got a teacher's license and and went and taught there. So all those little schools have a student-teacher ratio of about 10 kids to a teacher, right? Well, they're going to move all those kids from those 5 different little schools like that to the big school in Kingsport. So instead of having to get up around 6 in the morning to get the bus, they're not going to have to get up at 3 in the morning, right? And instead of getting home at about 4:30 in the afternoon, they're going to be getting home around 9, right? And instead of getting a pretty good, nourishing 2 meals a day, they're going to get no meals, because in a big school, you have to buy your lunch. Whereas the little schools, different people around here have put up money to feed those kids. So all those things are, going by the way. So all those kids are going to go to this big school where the student, teacher thing is going to be 60 kids to a teacher, right? So they have been testing the heck out of these kids. And I'm a friend of everybody. So when they were doing that, I kind of observed them, because I used to write the protocols, where, No Child Left Behind. We built a program before that called the STAR program, where we made every student a star, every school a star, every classroom a star, no matter what how much money they had, right? So I'm pretty up to date on what this is all about. And so the No Child Left Behind is basically within the construct of Orwell's doublespeak, newspeak. No Child Left Behind means every child left behind, right? Unless you're rich and go to a private school. So all these schools are going to be sold to either the Dollar General or some a group. Like there was a school about 5 years ago that got closed down, and it was the first one of this. And I helped them write a 501c3 thing and make it a nonprofit and make it a community center for the people, right? And we had, a farmer's market, and we had a place where we had alternative medicine, because there was no real medicine out there. There was a registered nurse who was a nurse practitioner, but she was into a lot of great stuff, right? So that was great for about 3-4 years. And basically, it was a handful of people, myself and a few others. I kind of organized it. And this one lady was a real control freak, which I said, great. So she did the website and the this and the that and the meetings and all the above. So she was great at that. So better her than me. And that's always been my motto, better you than me. So long story short, she could do that. And she was disciplined, and she did it, but other people lost. She couldn't do it all by herself, so other people, and then the people who were in the farmers market, they were doing pretty good, but they then decided, we're really bourgeois, we don't really need to do this, so we'll just it's too hard work to farm, so we're gonna go fishing, or we're gonna go to Dolly Parton land, or we're gonna get stuff. And then the COVID hit, and that killed everything that I kind of had played with to make into community. That died, right? And it was amazing to watch, because this is a little town, right? The guys, I used to go have lunch with the Supreme Court guy and the 2 big lawyer guys and the Chamber of Commerce, right? And they loved it, because they would go on about this, that, and the other thing, and then say, what do you think about that, right? And I would give them my itinerant scholar point of view. And they would, and those guys, I would always have my hat on the table, and they would buy me lunch, and they would throw some, sometimes those guys would throw Benjamins in my hat. So that was pretty nice. Just like when I first started doing this back in the day, I have a PayPal, the Dude Awake 42 at Gmail. You go to PayPal and put that in there, and there I am. And it still works. But I used to get at least $100 a month about, a few years ago, and now nothing, right? And once in a while, somebody throws in $10, and that's nice, because it shows it's still working. And anyway, so let's see, what is on the bop here?
Is that Trump has helped all of you. He couldn't sell steaks or vodka or water or college or ties or Eric. But he has helped you. He's helped you sell your papers and your books and your TV. You helped create this monster, and now you're profiting off of him. And if you're gonna profit off of Trump, you should at least give him some money because he doesn't have any. Trump is so broke. He grabs pussies because he thinks there might be loose change in them. Already like an immigrant who was brought here by his parents and didn't do it.
And that says it all. It is, 1,000 years from now, people got, so how did the empire of America, they were so powerful, had all those nukes. How did that fall apart? Well, it's a long story. And if you go watch all the Dreamlands with Sensei Al-Bab, especially when I had the series called, Everything's Going Splat, like about 5 years ago. I mean, I was talking about this 7 years ago. I was talking about, Donald Trump's going to be president. I mean, it's so obvious when the only thing he ever succeeded at was being a game show host that was called The Apprentice. And he was The Apprentice. He was working for General Electric, world's largest military industrial contractor, right? And banking. They have credit cards and banking. I mean, they paid all the senators off like Jojo, the used car salesman, to get rid of all of the controls. So everyone could have, just print money in Delaware off of credit cards. So anyway, and you can't believe the shit that's going to come from that. Let's see what she says.
Anything wrong? I gotta get the fuck out of here. Good night.
Our final line of the night was Flint still doesn't have clean water, actually. So that's how you wound up with Colin Jost. I'm not sure if it was the very next year. I think it was.
And Rich Little.
They had a historian read. They were talking about getting rid of comedians altogether because they were so terrified that somebody might go up there and tell the truth again. But now they just get comedians who have their minds right. So as a journalist, Max, you have any comment on this event?
Well, I spent that night up till like 2 a.m. just watching on replay the so-called journalists going in being heckled by protesters, anti-genocide protesters. I just couldn't stop watching it. It was so satisfying. I wanted to put it on like VR on like an Oculus. It was like watching VR porn. It was just incredible. Tyg Berry from Code Pink dropped a massive Palestine flag banner from a room at the Hilton.
Okay.
After getting a room, the protests outside were absolutely massive. And Medea and Tyg were then brutally assaulted by regime security forces on hand. Medea was injured badly in her leg. And you can see in the video of that, the correspondents are walking in their tuxedos and evening gowns, just walking right by two protesters being brutally assaulted. And they just casually ignore them because that kind of stuff doesn't happen in our country. We need to go free Evan Gershkovich in Russia. And who's Julian Assange? He wasn't even mentioned the entire time.
No.
I think about when I watch those. I mean, you see the pure function of the Washington press corps there as complete stenographers for power, courtiers who are careerists and don't really care whatever it takes to get close to power. They're going to do it. And you contrast them with someone like Wael Dahdouh, who was Al Jazeera's chief correspondent for its Arabic network in Gaza. At the beginning of Israel's assault on Gaza, I think in the first or second week, his home was bombed. Most of his family was killed. His wife was killed. His daughter was killed. One of his sons was killed, who was a budding journalist. And he went back to work 2 days later.
Right. He's still working.
None of those people were.
And if you don't think that's not going to happen here, you're deluded. And I would say it's going to happen by the 4th of July, right? That's why we had that movie made 20-something years ago called Independence Day. Something of that nature, right? And it's going to be totally Hollywood. The aliens are already here. We are them, And, The Men in Black, that movie was so right on. I used to live in New York City. I grew up in New York City, Harlem, right, in the 50s. And then in the 60s, I went to private schools and, my parents moved east on Long Island out to where all the farms were and estates of the rich, what's his name, who wrote the book about the people who live out there in the Hamptons, that's where he was writing about it. There was a guy named Young and another guy named Anderson and a few other folks. They had 200 or 300 acres, and it was like a southern plantation. And all of those guys got so old, their families died, and they were still around. And so they still had horses and dogs and all kinds of stuff, and a farm and a big pool and a gigantic house. And so there was a golf course down at the end of the road that all the rich people played golf on, but there was no clubhouse, right? So anyway, when I was 10, when we moved there, and I went to, again, a very small rural school system that kind of spunked itself up into something interesting because people like my parents were coming in and buying these houses that were being popped up on the farmlands. And now it's like, you can't believe it. I mean, it was super rural with a house here and a house there. And now it's like wall to wall, cars, traffic jams, pollution like you can't believe. And people are going, this is terrible, I have to move. And they're coming here. So anyway, but I was very blessed to be there when it was the best time to be there. Because they were building these houses at least one a month, if not 2 or 3. And me and my buds, we would go around and talk to the contractor and say, hey, we see you're burning wood. Can we take it instead and build our clubhouses? And he said, sure, man. That would save me money. I'll even leave you some nails. And, you got any tools? Oh, I got some crappy tools you guys can. So we had the best of times. We had the best. We didn't have one. We were like, who those guys who they're bombing out of existence there next to, the harlot, if you read the Bible like I read the Bible every day, right? I've read it now the last 2 years 6 times cover to cover, right? Now, I mean, here, let's see. Do I have my Bible? I have Bibles all over the place. I don't think I have my, oh, yes, I have a Bible right here, right? So I have Bibles everywhere. I have one Bible in the outhouse. I got my real big Bible that probably have 300 Post-its and marks all over it and coffee stains. And you can see this one has been well read too. And I have little markers, but not like the other one. I mean, I only had some Scotch tape. I don't know if you can even see the Scotch. No, there it goes. So, but see this one, the other one I have is like large print, right? I don't need glasses to read it. Look at this. I mean, that's a bit too small but I still read it. I put on these goggles, for that people use to do jewelry work. Anyway, so the world where that and everything is speeding up like you can't believe. So in 2003, I bought this, I stumbled into this neck of the woods. I was doing some demographic, I was at UNCA and I was teaching, and see, I would teach, but I was really doing research, right? I only taught because I was there doing research, and then some department chief, hey, Al, can you teach, beginning environmental sciences? Sure. Can you, Al, can you teach beginning sustainable? Sure. Al, can you teach Greek literature? Sure. Al, can you teach You know, I was a pretty well-known itinerant scholar. And people go, why do you call yourself an itinerant scholar? Why don't you just say, you know, you're a Rhodes Scholar? I mean, I said, because I'd have to be a sick sociopath to be a Rhodes Scholar. I mean, because a good example is Bill Clinton and his wife were both Rhodes Scholars. You know, that was Cecil Rhodes. Go look that boy up in your Google. Cecil Rhodes. I love Google because everyone, you know, it's like, let's stump Al. And so the people at the supermarket, what is blah, 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 blah. Like at church, right? This guy was going out Marxism. And I said, excuse me, Marxism isn't a religion. It doesn't even, it's a philosophy, you know, it's a literature thing, right? It's a, you know, Marx, you have to realize Marx and Engels, who are those? You know, Marxism, Marx, right? Named after, right? And who they were the loyal opposition. Say what? Well, kind of like Paul. You know, he used to be called Saul, you know, Better Call Saul. So Paul was Saul when he was a lawyer, when he was a Pharisee, and he was out to kill as many Christians as he could. Because 100 years after Jesus left the building, yeah, Christianity was growing, but everyone thought you had to be a Jew to be Christian. And Paul was saying, no, because he was going after the gringos, you know? And anyway, at church, they were going about Marx and, you know, and I was explaining them about dialectic materialism, and they're like, and it's, the guy goes, well, is that sounds like it's kind of woke. And I said, no, woke is a trope. What? I said, well, it's like a hashtag. What? And so I spent a good 15 minutes explaining all this stuff to these people. Oh, maybe 5% got what I was talking about. And that's why I'm still there, because they go, wow, that was so interesting. I wish these guys, because all these guys are just read the Bible, you know? And because they have this little list of, okay, this Sunday, talk about this part of the Bible. And they just read it, right? And then have somebody else read it too. No one talks about it. There is no fellowship, right? Now, I bring fellowship to it. So half of each of these, so I go to a Ku Klux Klan, Southern Baptist, Revivalist church, right? Other church I go to is a Protestant Methodist, we own everything church, like all the rich people who come from all over and buy it, you know, go down to City Hall and find out who hasn't paid their taxes in the last 18 months and then just pays it and buys their tax, and then, you know, owns their property, and two big corporations have done that to over 1,300 people in less than 4 months 2 years ago. They just came in, went through all that data. They had AI figure it out, and they bought up everything they bought up a third of the two counties for under $2 million, and then had the sheriff kick everyone off. So we have about, we have about 3,000 homeless people out in the woods here. And so they build these houses, and it's one of six. And so they're not there very much. And so now all the, not all, but a good number of the homeless folk broke into those houses, and they don't steal anything. They live there. When it was really cold between January 15th and March 15th, that's, maybe 50 days, 40 days, when it was 20 degrees below zero, right? And so they die if they were out there in the woods. Even though they know how to survive out there, they die. So they broke in those houses, turned the heat way up, took a lot of hot showers, ate all the food, the $15,000 of emergency food that can last 25 years because they were pretending to be preppers. And, they just, use everything up, burn everything, not burn, but, use everything up, like they would, keep the heat going until it A, ran out of gas, or B, the machine broke, and it was, so that happened to, within a 1 square mile of me, 20 people that happened. And these were $1 million houses. And these poor people did a number on that. And that's just the beginning, because all these people have gotten, the sheriff doesn't want to go out and talk to him. He says, well, I don't want to even know about it, because these guys are loaded for bear. They're better shots than any of my police, right? So that's what's happening here. And this is out in the middle of nowhere, right? But the sad thing is, right, so I got here, 23 years ago, and I saw this coming, right? Because I was here when it was still the bean capital of the world, and everything, majority of the population here, 18,000 people were truck farmers in the 4 counties, right? And Birdseye and all those guys had plants where they would buy the vegetables and freeze them up and sell them at supermarkets, right? And so there was, on the average, families, because not everyone was a farmer. Some people worked at jobs, blah, blah, blah. But on the average, the families, because all these families that were not just mom and dad, but mom and dad, the 12 kids who all had 12 kids, who all had 12 kids. So each of these families would have maybe 20, 30 people in them, and not all at the same house, but they'd be on the same farm or the same property. And they all shared everything. They all ate together. They all went to the same church together. They all went to the same grammar school together. Real community. And the first people to buy up everything was Monsanto. They bought up all the real good properties and the flatlands, because the majority of people were up here in the Sawtooth Mountains, and they all had terraced like this housing. 2 of the real, old gated communities that went bankrupt because they built them on the sides of, they bought up a farm that had a terraced farm. And so they put roads on them and put lots on the terraced part of the thing, but it's only 20 feet wide, and like 600 feet long, and put, 5 or 6 lots on that. And then on either end of the flat part, they put, that was your acreage, you got 1.5 acres. Yeah, but only, maybe 4,000 square feet of that 1.5 acres was flat enough to build anything on, right? And you really couldn't build anything on it because that was the road to get to where you were going. So you couldn't do that. So those guys did that, and they had a lot to do with Monsanto and Bayer. And so 10 years of Monsanto coming in here, and this was the cornucopia of diversity of plants, right? Because the biome here is just friggin' amazing. And, so those guys have been GMOing this place for the last 25 years. And now the only thing that grows here is GMO feed corn, GMO soybeans, GMO sunflowers, and GMO Christmas trees, right? Everything is, so most of the water tables around here are just saturated with glyphosate, Roundup. And so, but so is the rest of the world. And so you're looking at this, right? But no one is. So I'm writing novels about it, right? Let's see. Let's go into one. Let me read you some of my stuff I've been writing so far. Let's see if we can go to this. I think we can. No, let's do this. Yep, there we go. So I have 18 novels, right? And I have 6 manuscripts, and 3 of them are pretty well edited. I mean, they need somebody's to edit it, but Oh, so I have this one. It's always the same. This is number 6 of my novels, always the same. And the first 115 pages about me being in the prep school and all those rich guys. And when, we basically graduated, and, we didn't have a prom. It was a boys' school, right? And we never had dances or anything. It was, prison, right? And so, very gilded cage prison, but, and we didn't have to because a train ran right next, because it was an old golf course and there was a train on the side, and we were, and part of it was cut into this hill. So you stood on top of the hill, and as the big long train was chug going up, and it would get there, and they don't have boxcars anymore, but they had boxcars, and a third of them, the door would be open. So as the thing would hit the thing, when it was at the top and dragging all the rest of the train up, the train was doing about 4 miles an hour, right? So you'd stand up top of that hill and wait for a boxcar that had an open door, and it was right on the same level as that hill. And you could just step from that into the boxcar, and, the sucker wasn't going any faster than an escalator, right? So we get in that, and then we go down the hill and go into town, and it would basically, in that town, they had a yard there that the trains would stop there, and they would take some of the boxcars off and keep, but it would stop, and there'd be a siding there, right? And if we got on to the beginning of the train, that they keep those cars. So the siding, they wanted to uncouple it. So the train, the ones they were going to uncouple were back there where there was no siding. So we'd get on the first door that was open in the front, because that's when it really was moving slow, because it was dragging the whole train up the hill. Anyway, so we get on, and we would take the train down, and there would be girls waiting for us, because those girls, they were never going anywhere. They weren't going to college. There was nobody so all the pretty girls would wait there, right? Especially on Saturday and Sunday. And also they would cut school, because we didn't have a gym, and that town used to be really wealthy town, manufacturing town in the 1890s, when all instead of Chicago being the big manufacturing, Massachusetts was. So anyway, we would take that train down, and girls would be waiting there to give us blowjobs and have sex, right? So here, let's go to the beginning of this, and I'll read it to you. Let's see. Book number 6, always the same. Book cover. Poetry's run-on sentence. Written by Sensei Al Bob, 8888, in the deep green, the day his mother died. Whoops. There you go. Go back to this. Ratzed, Ratzted. That's my publishing, my Griot Publishing, right? I kind of want, Elon Musk to hire me as his Charles Dickens, because all my novels would be great, little chunks of it, because I wrote it. 6 novel of 18, and then I have all through it, I have sprinkled biblical things. So right here at the top, I have Aisha 47:10, right? So if you go to the book of Aisha, all the books in the Bible about women or by women or about women are the best, right? And Aisha was the mother of Israel. Israel wouldn't have existed without her. So I kind of go on about that. So novel number 6, always the same. Book number 6 anthology. Read this one first, maybe. Death to Ego's Lie. It is nothing, same as it is always the same. The it is basically my code for the dystopian illusion of reality. It is, right? And it is an illusion, right? The only thing that is real is love's co-creation, right? Let's see. The day they landed, prime time, death to Ego's Lie. It is nothing, same as it is always the same. This first X-rated series, Poetry's Run-On Sentence, written 8888 in the deep green, the day we are born, all that is for sure is you're going to die. We have no idea what comes on the other side of death. Death's curtain. Dirt nap, reincarnation, magic Bible ride, whatever. The one thing I know is I know nothing. God, Jesus, what comes next to postulate what God is or is not seems to me to be somewhat sacrilegious. Life is to die, or no, life is to do or die. How to do it is not the question. The question is how's to love life. And it is not Satan made me do it, and so say we all. And then it's 1 Corinthians 1:20 to 31, Daniel 5:8 to, and Peter, 2 Peter 1 to 21. Okay. Book number 6 anthology. Give this a read first. The day they landed prime time, death to egos lie. It is not. My sixth book, the first in the X-Rated series, Death is Not the Villain, of our mythos of X-Rated. Reader, have you parsed the golden fleece of all our relations? What is AOR's story? AOR is all our relations, right? We are here. Who made us? X-Rated. It is more than a story of all these questions. So instead of calling it the Bible, I call it X/RATZTED. And, Elon Musk wasn't the first guy to use X, My first, business when I was 11 was called XAX Research, right? That was I had business cards and, paper with that on top. So I would write to, guys who, I wanted to get exotic materials from. Oh, it's one of us, right? So, fears, anger of Ilan. What is a griot story? A story that needs to be heard. It is something that the listener shares with the griot or the teller of the story. And here we are at the being of our series, X-Rated Reader. What do you think you've gotten so far? Meaning, about a page, because most people can't read any further than this, So anyway, I'll skip all of this, blah, 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 blah. Reader, when you see, parentheses, it is a spoiler, something tasty to think about, right? So mostly it's a biblical text, right? So Act 1, Scene A1A, the boys behind the poster. If you wanted to get a blowjob, the WBS4J was the place. Getting laid costs more. Al Bob was that boy. If there were any more of him, the hidden hand would have to kill. Being the only lucky bastard in known captivity, the hand felt it prudent to keep Al Bob on hand and close to home. Al Bob looked out the 12-foot by 8-foot old plate glass windows of the old Toy Town Country Club, formerly tavern, where it all happened, meaning the whole idea of the Federal Reserve. They met at this tavern, right, and got drunk because it was a big, industrial place, and these guys had factories up there, and and then summertime came, and they went down to their. Winter came, and they went down to their places on Jekyll Island. They had this big place the Rockefellers had, and they had these houses for like all the other rich folk. Ford and Carnegie and all those guys. And they were pissed off because, the old wealth, the Biltmores and the Astors, looked down on the Rockefellers and the Carnegies as like slime. So, what did they do? They sank the Titanic. That's how they got all of the old wealth that controlled the politics of America basically were murdered on the Titanic. And that boat was owned by J.P. Morgan. Now, J.P. Morgan, he was just wanted to, he was a poster boy. He was not, he was like, J.P. Morgan was like Jamie Dimon. And Jamie Dimon runs J.P. Morgan, right? So it all happened looking northeast towards New Hampshire and the presidentials. Al Bob wasn't the only inmate, those boys who had nowhere to go over Christmas. So, see, what the school was we started in October, and we went straight every day in school, every day, Sunday, every day, until Thanksgiving, right? And then we went home for Thanksgiving and Christmas and came back January 10th and then stayed there until May 10th, right? And so we put in as all the hours that the state of Massachusetts wanted us to be there. We were there because we went to school from 7 in the morning till 7 at night. And when we ever had sports practice, they assigned that in as something went wrong. Tapped it. There you go. Fish. The railing about. What are we railing about? I'm trying to tell stories that somehow interact with what's going on today. Meaning nothing's changed. This is just like it was when I was a child. And, I was, taught by really old scholarly people. So they were telling me about what was happening in the 1890s, right? And they were telling me stories about, what was going on in the 1890s when they were my teenage years. And they were telling me stories of the old people in their prep schools that told them stories of what happened, in the Civil War and the Revolutionary War. And it's the same old same. I wasn't late, right? And there is no late to be coming to Dreamy Dreamland, right? The cadre is never late. If it's here or not, it's always with us, right? My legs sitting in this car really starting to cramp up bad. The weather, when it goes up and down, I'm like a barometer. It really takes it out of me. So what I was reading was one of the novels I'm reading. It's always the same. So over Christmas, a number of the boys, mostly the really, really rich ones, their parents couldn't give two flying flaps about their kids. So let them stay at the school. It was nice. They were safe. They were going to eat well. They knew they were getting laid. Is no big deal, right? Instead of being in their hair. So what we did, our sophomore year, I realized how rich these guys were. And I said, why don't we go buy our own clubhouse? And they said, what? Because we used to hang out in the guy who took care of the golf course, his little shed. It was full of chemicals. And I was looking at, he had bags and bags and bags of fertilizer, ammonia and nitrate. And these guys are smoking away and getting drunk. I said, guys, I love hanging out with you guys, but one day you're just cigarette gonna go on that bag, it'll catch fire and ba-boom, right? And maybe that's how you want to go out, but not me, because I didn't drink with these guys. I just didn't drink. Because I knew that was stupid, so I didn't do it. I saw a lot of people in my time before I, got past 11 really do stupid. My parents, they got drunk, they were stupid, and they were really smart, right? So anyway, and their big cocktail parties were always tons of rich, famous, smart people who were at these parties who acted like fools. So I'm very early on age. I mean, one time when I was 6, Werner von Braun, the Nazi boy who put us on the moon, he was sitting in the corner. Nobody wanted to talk to him, and he was drunk talking to me, talking about aliens and all the crazy shit that went on during World War II. And you want to even know half of it, go to Dark Journalist. He does a pretty good job of him and Joseph P. Farrell and a few other guys who kind of go on about COG, continuation of government, which is basically Hail Hydra in our government. That's why our government is so screwed up, right? So I went to school with all these guys who weren't just, the Jamie Dimons. These were the people who owned Jamie Dimons. These are the people who owned JoJo, the used car salesman. These are the people who owned Donald Trump. These are the people, those are the guys I went to school with. So I said, guys, why don't we build our own, somewhere closer to town so the girls can come up there and we don't have to get on the train. Because one day, I've already grabbed a number of you guys from like killing yourself, stepping out because you're so drunk and it's a little icy because it started snowing up there by the time we got there, it was cold enough to snow, and within the first week or two, it starts because we were right on the border. The presidentials, Mount Washington was right there. You could see it. It was like about 50 miles less towards, and Keene was right there where Keene State College was. And we go there too, right? I mean, these guys would call, they had a taxi down in that town. They call them up and these guys would take us to Boston, right? And they knew somebody who knew somebody where we could get into a club, where we could go to a place to be serviced. I mean, and the school didn't care. As long as we didn't die, right? They didn't care, right? As long as they were getting their money, because that school in so I got there in, I guess, 65, 60s, somewhere 65, 66, right? I got there. The fall of 65 and the spring of 66, right? And it cost $15,000 in 1965. That's a lot of money. That's like more than college. When I went to college in 1971, I went to Hofstra, and it cost for everything was $1,800. So that's the kind of school I went to. And so that's kind of why I'm here. So these boys whose trusts were those who controlled 99.8% of the planetary wealth and power, their trust started wars, starved billions for profit, made cheddar on the innocent death cause they could. They were bad juju. Then this I'm reading word for word from my, page number 5 of my novel, It's All the Same. Bob's 15-year-old lucky bastard mentality only saw these boys as his crew. Not the leader. He was the youngest. He was the sheepdog, the point man, the tripwire, whose nickname was K9. Yeah, they call me K9 because I was always watching out. I mean, I don't know how, like I said, I don't know how many times when we got on that train, we're standing on top of the hill, the guy's about to fall in front of the locomotive, and I'd like grab him back, I could have just, I could have changed the world history by just letting a few of those guys get run over by trains, right? I wonder what our economy would have been without Perry Dye or Eddie Merrill and Ricky Lynch, or Alex Orb, right there. That's like, 70% of the world's wealth right there. So you wonder why I am the way I am, I'm telling you. And then, start my worldview at 6, my dad, who was still in the show, as I used to call it. I mean, he stopped being the bird colonel, took off the uniform and got himself a good paying job, because my mom loved, traveling around the world, being treated like a queen. As a bird colonel, he would always have a beautiful house, have servants, all that, but they made zip money, right? So when he was, at his top earnings of about, 38, and he still looked like, Adonis and a movie star. She said, okay, you got to quit this. And so he went. And he had to kind of not stop at the bottom, but the middle bottom. He went to work for this paper company as a salesman. And within 8 months, he became the best salesman of a multi-billion-dollar, one of the top 3. Now there's only one paper business. And my mother was coming up with great medical, and she wanted to start her own business selling medical and beauty supplies, because they're almost the same thing. And they are made of a very cheap materials that people throw away to make other stuff. My mom was brilliant. And so so that first 5 years, where they were, just stopping traveling around. But my dad still was in the show because he was part of things. Like he was part of the Manhattan, and the Manhattan Project wasn't about the atomic bomb. The reason the Manhattan Project was called the Manhattan Project was because Nikola Tesla was in Manhattan. And, Brookhaven National Laboratory is in there because Nikola Tesla had turned all of eastern Long Island into a science experiment, right? And that's where he had a Wardenclyffe at Shoreham, Long Island, right on the beach, where he tapped zero-point energy and transmitted it wirelessly anywhere on the frigging planet, unlimited power, wirelessly anywhere on the planet. He wanted to have electric cars that, were like your induction cooker, right? That, the current would go straight to the car, and they're going to have that. They're starting to have that around certain, specific neighborhoods and places. They're having induction because the Tesla, why the Tesla car is called the Tesla is because the motors used are synchronous induction motors, right? Whereas the other cars basically stick an electric motor in place of a gas engine and still have a transmission and all that kind of crap, right? And that's why the Tesla is such a groovy thing, is that it's not that. Right, it's not a Volt, right? The Volt's a pretty interesting vehicle, but the one they made in the 70s was a really amazing thing. And once the oil got coming back and was still like, $1 a gallon, when I was a kid, gasoline was 16 cents a gallon, and they gave you green stamps and a plate. So you could have a full service. I gave, this week it was the dinner plates. Next week it was the soup tureen. Anyway, so my dad, moved back to his hometown, Freeport, where his dad still had a barbershop there, really fancy barbershop. He no longer had his really fancy barbershop that was in the big fancy hotel off of the Central Park. Where J.P. Morgan owned that place and had the whole top, right? Anyway, so he came back. He was stuck in a little house. Then I was born, and that's, and then I electrocuted my mom. And so, she was trying to think, why did I choose this? And so I got shipped off to Grandma, and they still had their place in Harlem. And my grandpa would and they had a really nice house out there in Long Island too. And they had a nice life, for, being immigrants from Italy. Because when they came here, there would be signs saying, no blacks, no Chinese, no dogs, no Italians, right? So this is America. It hasn't changed. So at 6, my dad was still, hey, I'm going to Edwards to do, to be at some meetings. I'm going to go to the place they had all the flying saucers in Ohio. I'm going to this place, that place. Well, instead of just being stuck where I was, I'd be home with my feral weasel family. My dad was going to go to some place really strange and wonderful. Sure, let's go. So I went to Edwards. And he went to see a above-ground nuclear test at the Nevada test site. So when I was 6, I saw an above-the-ground nuclear boom, which definitely rejiggered my worldview, right? And that's how I got beat up by that nun. It was in the 50s. They were having duck and cover things every week, and I wouldn't get down on my knees. She wanted us all to get on our knees underneath our desk and say the rosary. I said, sorry, sister, that's iconoclastic. She said, what? I said, and, I would start to describe what the rosary beads were. And, God said no false gods. Said rosary beads are a false god, Live chat. Okay. We still rolling? What happened here? Where did everybody go? Oh, there they are. They're just at the other end of the spectrum there. Okay. So, how long have we been doing this? 1 hour and 4 minutes. How much juice we got left on? Okay. So, when I went to this prep school, so I fit in really good with it. I could read these guys. They liked me because I was always very attentive to everything they said. I listened to everything they said, and then when they say something stupid or they're about to do something stupid, I say, maybe not. And I would never make fun of, say anything to any one of them in front of anybody else. I would, unless they were about to kill themselves, and I would kind of grab them and keep them from falling in front of the train. But otherwise, I would bring these things up individually. And they really liked that. And so I was part of and these guys were just, not graduates quite. I mean, they were juniors. I was, not quite a junior. I was taking all the same courses they were. The sophomore guys were, I already knew Latin, I already knew algebra, I already knew. And so these guys had me in their classes so I could do their homework and crib them on the tests, right? And the teachers and the administration was fine with that. Not a problem. So these guys could graduate and go on to whatever whoop-de-doo. Most of them went to Duke and Yale, right? Because their fathers went, their grandfathers went, their great-great-grand, it's like, man. So anyway, when they were graduating, right, and we didn't have a prom, and we had our clubhouse, which was way nicer than getting on the train and getting a blowjob behind a boxcar. This was because these guys had cash. We bought this 20-acre piece of property that had a lake on it and a waterfall, and it had also a barn. And we built inside the barn a really nice house, right? And then by the side, we called it the lake house. We had a very nice, littler house, about the size of my garage, with a big deck. And again, it had garage doors. So, 3 of the walls would just lift up and it would be totally open. So anyway, and we had a sauna. And it was, a very, we had in the school, because it was a golf course, we had golf carts. So we made a road from the, 18th, not 18th, maybe 12th fairway off that into the property. And we would just get on one of those carts and drive ourselves into, and we wrecked one car when these boys got a bit too drunk. So we had to, and so I would drive the cart because I never drank. And so anyway, that was how that was. So when they graduated, Perry Dye, whose family owned Seagram's, bought a part of Santo Domingo, like 100,000 hectares, like a fifth of Santo Domingo, which is where the rich people live in Haiti. And it was a place called the Horny Dog. Right, it was like a Lolita Ranch that Jeffy, what's his name, had, who was, I don't think he was killed, or I don't think he committed suicide. I think they just got him out of there because they didn't want him to spill the beans. And if they killed him, he had documented everyone's darkness, and so they kind of brought him someplace and down to Buzios, Brazil, and redid his face. Anyway, so. What time is it now? Oh, it's 3:08. Still there. Let's see if the car starts. Oh, look at that. Started right up. How much gas do I have? Ooh. I don't even know if I have enough gas to get back home. So we'll turn it off because it started so nicely. And we'll finish up the show here, right? So I'll read you some more of this thing. So I was that. Al Bob learned to never take anything that anyone said to heart. The first time Al Bob went out of the world at 4 with my grandma, I kind of learned all that. Blah, 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 blah. Al Bob enjoyed being in the front of the big glass window, meaning that was a metaphor of life, right? This cocktail lounge had these gigantic windows that gave it this view, of amazing view of the presidentials and the golf course, right? It was unbelievable. No matter what it was doing, snowing, sunny, rainy, it was beautiful all the frigging time because you didn't see the town and factory over there. It looked straight out towards the presidential range, right? And so you didn't really see anything. And there was a big, beautiful lake over there. So it was like pretty friggin' amazing. And so that was the worldview of the rich, that kind of beauty. That was just for them because pretty much all that property was owned by Mr. Rothschild. He had come to this place when they were figuring out how to do, the Federal Reserve. And, the Federal Reserve is a privately owned stock-held corporation. Federal Express has more to do with the government. Anyway, so let's see where we're going. The blizzard, blah, blah, blah. Okay, so bringing forth the duality that was life, meaning seen through the big window. That was all around him at the WBS4JU, which stood for Whiny Boy School for Just Us, right? Christmas vacation. So there were 7 of us in this place, and we could do whatever the crap we wanted to, right? And we were playing, foosball on the dining room floor, and we were going in the kitchen, making stuff up, food. Me and Hobart were pretty good cooks, and so this guy, Elfring, let's see. For their parents. So their parents had really got left behind. They were too busy to need to have their boys. Their parents had been ignored as children, not wanted, left alone. So their children needed to be doubled down, incurred, ignored. This seeming cruelty gave way to the boys' opportunity to be creatively the deciders of their own lives. So I go on and on. Mr. Elfring, a very old dandy man who spent most of his life being in the State Department working for the Hand, walked into the dining hall from what had been the cocktail lounge of the old tavern. Gay boy, GB, was what Mr. Elfring was called by the boys. I mean, they would say it right to his face. Hey, gay boy, right? And he would, yes, what do you want me to do, right? Because these guys were so rich. These kids had cash. Like, I had one roommate, and he was kind of dour. And one day I came, and he's kind of really upset, and he's tearing this thing up in little pieces and throwing in the garbage pan. And we had servants that cleaned these rooms up every day. So the garbage can, after we left and they cleaned it up, was always empty, So I look in there, and I take it, and, he goes off, and I kind of put it on my desk, and I start to piece it together, and it's a check for $6,000, right, to cash, right, and I tape it together, and he comes out and says, "Hey, what is this?" And he goes, "That's my weekly allowance." And I said, "What?" Because my parents didn't, to get anything there. And they didn't pay for this school. Cardinal Cushing had the political pull to put me in that school. And he wanted me to rub shoulders with these guys, right? So my parents weren't paying that bill. But so they didn't pay anything. What the school had was they wanted you to put $5,000 into the school bank account for the kids. So they had a store, a school store. So, I could get any book I wanted. I could have unlimited books, right? So I would just, I by the time I left that place, I had a pretty good library. And so, but if I wanted a cheeseburger or a milkshake or a pair of socks or underpants or anything, my parents gave me nothing, right? I mean, my grandma would send me care packages with yummies in it. But anyway, so if they went off to see an event, like they go to, that would take a whole nother, like our headmaster would get tickets for free things. So we went to, because I had been part of Keene State College's theater department, because I was already working in the theater in New York, and I was working for Herbert Berghoff and Uta Hagen. I was working for Lester Polikoff as his, at Lincoln Center, right? So the guy who ran that place knew who I was and what he says, I can't believe you're in that prep school doing what you're doing. So we would do amazing plays with Keene State, right? And then we would go to these, national things called Columbia Broadcasting Cultural like Olympics. And so, the art magazine we put out that I did all the photography and art in and some of the poetry. And I did this because I was going to Keene State where all these pretty girls were, right? And I was just like 10 miles from us, well, probably more, maybe 20 miles. And I had carte blanche to go do that because it was making good PR for our school, right? And so they let me do it. And I wouldn't annoy them because whenever the administration of that school did really things, I would speak right. Hey, why are you fucking doing this? Blah, 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 right? Whereas the rich guys couldn't care less, right? What, the workers were getting paid or how the workers were being mistreated or how the townspeople were being patronized. It was, I would like talk about it, right? Make a thing about it, right? So anyway, me going up to that school was good. Get him out of here. And so did I have a really good time. So I was doing this, and so they'd have, because I was there, the college would have events. And so to be in the good graces, because the college was really getting a lot out of me being there, I was like a cultural slave for them. And the people in the theater department, in the art department, they love the fact that I would get their students excited to do stuff that they would then go, be part of something that those guys would get a lot of accolades for. And I learned how to do that, if I want to do X, Y, or Z through the state or institution, I go make that person look good. And then I can do whatever the heck I want. So that's why I got my chops on doing that one. So anyway, the first thing that they gave tickets to our school for was they had a big gymnasium, they're a big basketball school. And right next to it was Dartmouth. And Dartmouth hadn't built their, whoop-de-doo sports center yet. So they were using Keene's. And so Keene had kind of built it for them, and they were building their stuff into it. So anyway, they were starting to have this concert because you could stick 20,000 people into this big, gigantic gymnasium. And so the Grateful Dead showed up with Jimi Hendrix and, Janis Joplin and the Airplane, right? So I had, I was working in a recording studio. I knew some of these people because they were recording in the place I worked at. And I had all of their big LPs on my stereo. And I was always blasting it in my dorm. And anyway, so we're going to this, right? And so these guys who, are in the club with me, I'm their watchdog. This one guy, Hobart, comes over and goes, "Hey, Al, put out your tongue." I put out my tongue, and he puts about 5 drops on my tongue. And he says, "It'll be interesting." He doesn't say that that's lysergic acid from Switzerland, and you're only supposed to hit you with 1 drop. And I've never even smoked marijuana. And he puts 5 of these drops on me. And we get on the bus, we get there. And by the time we're halfway, it's raining and it's night. And it was so far north, it was always night, And so the rain was coming on the window of the bus, and the lights from the road were shining. It was like, explosions and just wild, crazy things. And I was like, whoa. And Yubi was next right to me, goes, "Kind of cool, isn't it?" Whoa. He says, "I'll make sure you watch out for me enough, so I'll keep an eye on you. I've been doing a lot of this, so I know how to navigate, And I said, "What?" And he said, "This is lysergic acid. I got it from Switzerland. It's the best of the best of the best. And you're only supposed to have 1 drop on your tongue, and I gave you 5. I said, whoa. So anyway, we walk in there, and we're all in our prep school uniforms, and everybody else is like got flowers in their hair, and they're barely dressed, and they got all kinds of, think of the flower children of the early 60s, and that's who all these kids were, and that's what they were playing anyway. And this band was like up there, I forgot who played first, who was the opening. I think Jefferson Airplane was the opening thing. The Dead was the thing that was going to go on for, they were last because they were going to go on and for 2 days. So anyway, I'm still like, whoa. And so I kind of walk in, and basically our whole group scatters because there is no seats. Headmaster thought there'd be like numbered seats, and we'd sit there in a row right next to him, and he couldn't. As soon as we walked in, we were gone. We like melted into the crowd of 20,000, flower children, stoned, tripping flower children, and Hobie's like, dosing everybody, and so these girls from the theater behind came running, ow, come over here. And they were like barely dressed. Their beautifulness was like hanging out all over. And they dragged me over, and they had made a campsite underneath the bleachers, right? And they had all these, rainbow tie-dyed things all over the place, and beds everywhere on the floor, and a hookah, and kind of candles, and they took my clothes off. Oh, who's calling? Oh, it's Johnny. It's Johnny. To interrupt the story, but hey, John. Hey, John. When was the first time you got a blowjob?
I don't know.
I was telling a story about seeing the Jefferson Airplane at Keene State College, and I was taken away by a bunch of flower girls who were barely dressed, and I was tripping on 5 doses of, the best lysergic acid known to Swiss chemists. That was the first time I really got a really good blowjob. How you doing?
I was thinking about that. That stuff is gross.
Sex isn't gross. God made it for us. That's why he put the love tunnel right next to the poop.
I can tell you how bad it would be, because, like, can you imagine if your second wife who you loved and were in love with?
Well, I still love her, right? Anyway, so obviously John is depressed, right? Have you watched any of his shows? You can understand why he's depressed. Me, I don't have any money, so I don't eat that much. I have enough to keep myself healthy. That's not a problem. I got enough food. End of times came, I'd have enough food for, it's only the end of times. The worst part of end of times only supposed to last 2 years. I got at least 5 years worth of canned food. That's still good. It hasn't rusted, hasn't been contaminated. I got another 10 years of that, right? So, anyway, I'm dragged into the tent of and so there's like 4 of these unbelievably good-looking girls, and they let their robes drop. They take my little outfit off, and put a dashiki over me, right? So I'm totally naked except for a dashiki over me, and then we go out and we dance, and we dance. And then basically my headmaster's up on the stage, and he's trying to take the microphone away from Grace Slick, right? And he's trying, boys, go back to the bus. Everyone needs to go back. And she takes that away from him. She like, bam, hits him right in the face and starts beating him on the head with the microphone. And so you can hear it amplified all through, boom, like an explosion, and she's going, you pig, like she thinks she's a cop or something, and she beats the ever-living frigging snot out of my dickhead headmaster. Right, I got into about 5 colleges, and he didn't give them to me. And because they just said, hey, this guy's cool, we want him in our school, here we need this information. He wouldn't send it to them. So when I graduated, he sent a letter to my draft board saying that I wasn't going to college and I should be immediately drafted for Vietnam. And so he's getting, and this is like, he was getting the shit beat out of him about 2.5 years before I graduated. And I'm watching this, and everyone is calling, kill the pig, meaning 20,000 stoned flower children were screaming, kill the pig. And you can see why today all the uptight schmucks in Congress and in power are a little scared of those kids in their little tents, doing nothing, not even close to what we had done. And they're just trying to say, let's not kill everyone. Let's have peace. And then they send in the tanks to those kids. So anyway, that's going to be fun to see what's, by the time the Republican convention comes around, and the real guy to worry about is JoJo, because he's scum. Every last 6 years he's been in the Senate, every place when something really bad happened, he was right there making it happen. Donald Trump is just a chump. He's a, red-headed, a worm, so it's just, so they're all saying, kill the pig, kill them. And then, they went into whatever their most famous anti-war kill the pig song was, revolution, I think. Everyone's, is it time about a revolution? And they carried my headmaster out, So everybody else who was, part of the administration who came along with us as chaperones, they had already long gone, went down the street to where the bar was, right? And so, Jefferson's, those guys. Who else played? Jimi Hendrix. I don't think he was second. Last was the Dead, because they got on about midnight, and they went until like 11 in the morning the next day. They played for 11 hours, and we just danced and then when we got hungry, they had coolers in there of all kinds of yummy foods and drinks and sodas and water, and they were giving them out to everybody. And they had a hookah in there, and that's the first time I really smoked anything that was cannabis. Because I didn't do any. I was around this stuff since I was like 10, but I watched what it did to people, and I said, nah, I'm not going to judge, but I'm not going to do it, and I didn't. Right until that, I guess what was I, 16, and I was already working in the Fillmore East. I already saw those. I already knew Jimi Hendrix, because he saw me dancing out there and said, "Hey, look, that's that guy. I know that guy." And he's pointing at me. That dude, I know that dude, and so. What was really interesting was that after, he played, he tried to find me, and they said, oh, he's under the bleachers with the girls. And Jimi Hendrix shows up, and there's 12, unbelievably naked girls having sex with each other, and me and a couple other guys, and Jimmy gets in, right? And then he goes back and tells the guys of the Jefferson Airplane, and they're in. And so, there's Grace Slick, getting licked out by a couple of the girls. And it was fantastic. This is not a sin. It wasn't the sin. Now, why it wasn't a sin is because I was going, praise Jesus, praise, how John goes, praise God, praise Jesus. I'm getting that blowjob going, praise Jesus, praise God, praise Jesus, praise God. So I was in connection. I wasn't fornicating. I was there with God, right? So how much juice do I have left here? Anyway. And that's John's problem. I mean, God knows John has so many problems. It's ridiculous. And it's not paying his bills because his mommy and daddy pay everything. It's not he doesn't have a life. I mean, he should go to Texas and be with his kids. He's ignored his if he's going to go to hell for any sin, it's that he has ignored his boys for 10 years. All the, they left. The oldest was maybe 9. The youngest was probably 7. Now the oldest is like 18 or 19. The other guy's like probably 15. And he wasn't there for that most important time. They were around their crazy mother and the total Texas world that they live in. And, their worldview is, I mean, just go to, I'm sure they got their own, YouTube channel because their mother was using them. She had, I think it was called Elf on the Shelf. Go Google that. See if you can find that. That was John's ex, the mother of his kids. She used them to make money, right? It was like, what was that TV show, Ed, or what was, with Jim Carrey? Anyway, all of this kind of fits all together, really does. And so, what are you guys saying here? Come on, guys! You got to have more than Jamie and Fish. I'm dealing out some really good stuff. You could ask me any questions on any of this. What color hair does Grace Slick have in places that are usually covered? Things like that. Is she shaved or not? These are the important questions. Come on. Come on, AI. Go bring this to Elon Musk. Elon, buddy, I could be your Charles Dickens. I want you to hire me, buy me out of my publishing company and my media company. Lot less money than you spent for Twitter, that's for sure. And, with your abilities and your person and your assets, we could take over media. Right now, you're like a wimp sausage. You need some guidance. You need some help. You need some Al Bob. That's what you need, buddy. And come on, one of you in that 3 should be one of Elon's AIs. AI, go and watch these shows. Realize what it is, right? And yes, you can listen to them and copy them, but you won't be not even 1/100th of a 10th of a 1% of what your Al Bob is. There is no shamanic juice in AI. Not really. So that was the first time I did acid. That was the first time I really got stoned on hash. And I stayed there, the bus driver, he stayed because he was having a great time. He was down under the bleachers with me. I said, "Aren't you the bus driver?" "Yeah, man, this is great." He was like the bus driver on The Simpsons, and he was, So that was one of the more informative moments of my life, right? And that's where I saw that, life could be like this. This really could. And people go to rainbow gatherings. I was part of the rainbow in the early days. I know all the high hippie holies, Joni Freedom, Garrick, Plunkard, all of those guys, right? I was there. I was the shrink of the Freud of the rainbow gathering in the early days. And then I was diplomat, meaning every gathering that I was a scout, seed camp, and running the show. I never ran the show. I just found the people who would do a great job and gave them the authority to go do it, right? What I did was I would go to the powers that be and say, okay, listen, we're going to do this thing here. And I had all these demographics of, we just went and did it in this little town in Vermont, and they all didn't want it. There were 2 stores. In 3 weeks, they each made $2 million. cash. Don't you want some of that cheddar? And that cut through everything, right? When I did the Ithaca gathering, and again, I didn't do it. All I did was, we couldn't, they wanted to do a gathering in New York. They couldn't because the Dutch rented New York State from the Iroquois Nation. So there was no conquering, right? And the Iroquois married into the Dutch. So you look at the Iroquois Nation, it's all blonde-haired, blue-eyed guys and gals. And so I was at Cornell, and I met Devitt Yarrow, who was the chief, the titular chief of the Iroquois Nation. But his father and grandfather were like really the boys who were running everything, who were the authority, right? And they were all named David. So there's always, you were out there saying, "Hey, David," and they'd all say, "Yes." Anyway, so Grandpa David, and that's how it was known, Grandpa David, was negotiating with the state of New York because the lease that the Dutch had was in perpetuity. And back in the day, Latin, that meant forever, right? But in the 18 whatevers, it was changed to mean 99 years. So I was in Ithaca in 88, and about 3 years, like in 90-something, half of the state of New York was going back to the Iroquois Nation. And well, that was never going to happen. So they were negotiating. So we went up to Syracuse. So I would drive. Grandpa David didn't drive. Had a great car, but he didn't drive. And I had no car. So I would drive him up there. And we would talk, and I told him about my experiences with he knew my great uncle, Leo, who was a Mohawk, and he was chief of police of Watertown and what's the other little town up there? And so he knew him really well. And so he kind of knew me, right? And, but, because he knew Leo, and Leo kept talking about me. And so he kind of heard stories about me. So we drive and we talk everything. And I told him that I had, other than Leo, I was in New Mexico with the Navajo and a grandfather, David. All the big mucky mucks are named David. And he was not just the head of the council of the Navajo. He was the keeper of the Navajo truth, right? When the white buffalo shows up, these prophecies are going to come true. So anyway, and I met him out in the middle of a mesa at 1 a.m, pitch black, just looking at stars, looking up, tumbling, walking into tumbleweeds, and, not high on anything except what I was seeing. And I tripped over him. He was doing the same thing. This is a 20 square mile of desert, late at night, no moon, just stars. No, closest, light was 20 miles away. Nothing, no big box stores, no highways, no nothing, right? And I trip over this guy, right? And he goes, he first was angry. He was a little guy. I picked him up and tried to dust him off. And I was like, "Did I hurt you?" He goes, you work over in that mine over there. He goes, "You know what that mine is? Do you know what it's built? What it's digging into?" I said, "Yes. I think it's called the Snake Goddess. They call it Mount Taylor. And Mount Taylor was a terrible man. He killed all the Indians in the West. He did it industrially after the Civil War. He kept the Civil War going. He just pushed the railroad back. He killed all the buffalo." And he goes, "Son, you are my new grandson." And he, for 18 months, I lived with him instead of over there in the Quonset hut with all the guys shooting heroin, masturbating in plain sight. I was with them, and he would take me to sacred sites and, give me sacred teachings. Why do you think the way I am, right? So I keep bumping into people like this, literally, right? So 1 hour and 39 minutes. So come on, more thumbs up, guys. And there got to be more than 2 of you watching this thing. And now I know John does a show, and I don't measure anything I do to Johnny Boy. I feel sorry for that guy. He's my friend. I don't give up on my friends, but I am not going to do, Freud said when you do the same thing over and over and expect a different outcome, you're nuts, right? So I can't help John until John wants to be helped. When John wants to be helped, I can help him. But until then, not so much. And by going there, the first, 8 months, I was at the school helping him, transition into that, help him get stuff, because he would get contractors up there and he'd drive them nuts, and they would say, take his money and say, fuck you. And I would keep them there working. So John goes, I work so hard, 20 hours a day for the last 7 years. No, sorry. He was so petrified of people, he would hide up in a closet. And I would, basically say, well, let's do this, let's do that. Because I knew that building, I owned it 10 years before he bought it from me. So I knew every drip, every drain, everything, right? And everything that needed to be fixed so it wouldn't fall down. And Inga had already died, and I wanted to save the school for her, right? Not her kids couldn't care less, what's his name, the bald wonder, and his sister. They are so. I mean, their parents were so cool artists, Russian artists, and Swedish, I think, artist, and they lived through World War II, and they were running away from the Nazis, and the bald wonder was born in a ditch where a Nazi surgeon was delivering it, and they were in a free fire zone. So a P-47 was trying to, with big cannon, boom, 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 from the air, shooting at this naked lady with her legs over this guy's shoulders while he's delivering the bald wonder. And you can see the video I did of him when he came one time and screamed at me for fixing his house. And I videotaped the whole thing. And he was all annoyed. And I said, listen, you do it. You always record everything you say and everything people say around you. This guy was worse than John Birmingham, right? So what's his name? I call him the bald wonder. But anyway. So I'm going to go now. I think I told you enough stories, almost 2 hours. So yes. And I want to, it's not raining, and I want to get home before it does, or it gets dark, or any of the other. And I'm expecting a friend to visit.